We have a very special guest today, Mr. Devdutt Pattanaik. One introduction I want to give him about him is he is a mythologist and he has written 30 books. And today we are going to talk to him about a very controversial topic, sexuality in Indian mythology and other mythologies as well. Devdutt, thank you very much for coming to our show.
Thank you for calling me.
And it's a pleasure to really get to know you. And it's a topic which really interests me a lot as well. And to the whole universe, human race, I should
Yes.
say. So let's start. How did you get interested into mythology?
So this was a hobby. I'm trained in medicine and I worked in the pharmaceutical industry for 15 years. And my free time I used to study the Puranic stories, Ramayana, Mahabharata, and I used to enjoy it. And I suddenly realized that what books were written out there were either for children or for scholars. Nothing was written for general public. And so I decided to write my own stuff, and now it's become so big that I do it all the time.
Excellent. Now, I heard you speak first at the India conference at Harvard.
Yes.
And you had a very interesting view about sexuality in the mythologies. And that's how we came across this idea that we should sit
Yes.
down and talk about that. So where do we want to start about sexuality in Indian mythology?
Well, I think we should ask that why do we consider it controversial?
Okay.
Let's ask this. Well,
Sure.
it's just normal part of nature. Why are we so embarrassed by it? You see, when we are speaking in English right now, why
Sure.
are we speaking in English? Because we are really products and outcomes of a colonial legacy.
Sure.
And the British who ruled us, they used to read the Bible, and in the Bible, sex was the sin, the first sin. The first act of sin is associated with sex and sexuality. So you were governed for a long time by people who saw sex as something bad. But if you read the Puranas, you read the Mahabharata, Ramayana, sex is seen in a very matter-of-fact way. In fact, sex can be seen literally and metaphorically. And metaphorically, it refers to human relationships. Sambandh rakhna. So sambandh can mean two things. Relationship, also sex. So when we use the word sexuality in mythology, we are referring to human relationships and the intimacy of human relationships. Are you interested in other people? Are you not interested in other people? So the person who just closes his eyes and is not looking at other people, jo bairag leta hai, who sort of has given up the world, is away from sexuality. So he's all alone. But the moment you open your eyes into darshan and look at other people and engage with other people, then you have acknowledged your sexuality. And therefore the gods in the temple are always dampatya, husband-wife. On temple walls there'll be men and women, and in some temples there'll be men and men, women, women. So all kinds of sexual, it talks about human relationships. Do you connect with other people? How do you connect with other people? And what is the nature of your relationship? Is it exploitative? Is it loving? So Ravan's sexual attraction towards Sita is unhealthy because she's not reciprocating. He's not respecting her views. So through sexuality, they have help to explain the human condition, human relationships. That's the role of sexuality in mythology.
So now we are going to go in a reverse chronological order.
Okay.
So we are today totally confused and very hesitant to talk about sex and as we said earlier, controversial topic.
Yes.
And we trace it right back to the colonial times. Before colonial times, there was also Muslim rulers in India.
Yes.
And how did that impact the sexual connotation there?
Honestly, they embraced the Indian sexuality. When they came in, remember most of the two types of Muslims came to India. One were traders, businessmen, who came to Kerala and the southern part of India. North India came from Central Asia, and they were warriors, and they came from dry lands, dry, barren lands. Some of them, the bureaucrats, came from Persia, which had a very rich culture of music, art, but it was a Persian culture. And they all came to India, and they saw a land where there are temples, and in the temples, worship takes place by singing and dancing and color and design and fragrance, food, all that is part of worship. So what you see is a change in their mindset. They became Indianized. In fact, there's a very famous sentence that the Mughals came wearing leather pants and they left wearing silk petticoats.
Okay, that's very interesting.
You know, because they became Indian. What it means is, you know, you can see it negatively and positively. So negatively is, oh, they became effeminate, they became feminine. But positively is, they became feminine. They rejected the violent masculine side that they brought in, and India made them appreciate the beauty of life and made them feminine. The British didn't learn that. They didn't appreciate it at all. This wonderful sensual traditions of India. So that you had, for example, in Lucknow there was the Tawaif culture. When you hear of Anarkali and all that, this was not happening in Persia. This happened in India. The Nach, Gana, when you hear of Rani Rukmati, Baz Bahadur, music, जितने भी म्यूजिक इंडिया में है घराने हैं, all the singing, the Hindustani classical were patronized by the Muslims, and the songs, the Kathak dance was patronized by the Muslim rulers. So what Indian Muslims or the subcontinental Muslims are very different. Today when we think of Islam, it is with this Wahhabi Arab Muslim which is puritanical. That's a small group which has become very powerful today. But in the 14th, 15th, 16th century, when the Europeans came to India, they were horrified. They was like, Raja bhi naach raha hai, ga raha hai, Praja bhi naach rahi hai, ga rahi hai, bura hai. So you know, they did what they think a happy culture they saw as an evil culture. So जहाँ पे सुख समृद्धि, everybody is happy, they saw it that no, people should be unhappy, they should wear black, because they came from a land which was cold and grey and black, and everybody was serious and God was always punishing. For them India was a weird country. They said, here God is always smiling, God is playing the flute, He's dancing, singing. यहाँ के मुसलमान भी बहुत अलग हैं, वो भी गा रहे हैं, they are singing and dancing, and for them this was a very strange culture.
So now let's move further backward and before the Muslims. So Muslim came to India. How was at that time India, and how was sex looked at that time?
So at that time, so let's look at temples which were built. Some of the large temple complexes that we talk about, because in India it's not so linear. But like the Puri temple in Odisha was built in the 12th century. It was already functioning, but this what temple you see today is built around the 12th century. So Muslims already started coming in. But what you see is the temple is called Jagamohan. उसके सामने का जो डोर है उसको बोलते हैं नाट्य मंडप. तो भगवान के सामने there's a theater where people sing and dance. In front of that there's Bhog Mandap, जहाँ पे खाना is being served. So what you see in that India is a tension. There are two schools of thought. One is the school of the hermit or the Bairagi, and the other is the householder, जो गृहस्थी है. So there is a tension between, on one side there's a Devadasi, on one side there's Radha Parampara, the sensual traditions, the tantric traditions. On the other side there is the Vedanta tradition of acharyas like Shankaracharya, Madhavacharya, who are celibate, जो नाच गाना ज़्यादा पसंद नहीं करते हैं. They are living in monasteries, मठ में रह रहे हैं. And there is this healthy tension between the two, because if you get too sensual, then it is balanced by the hermit traditions, and if it's too hermit, then it's balanced by the sensual traditions. This is what defined India for 1,000 years, more than 1,000 years. So you had this continuous tension between these two forces. On one side there is sexuality, dance, singing, music. On the other side is dhyan and yoga and the viharas, the Buddhist viharas. So, and the Hindu mutts, where sex was, you have to give up everything. You have to walk away from everything. This was ancient India for a very long time. From the Mauryan period onwards, you see this tension. So, Mauryan period is about 2,300 years ago.
Right.
So, almost for about 1,500 years, this was Indian tradition. This tension between the hermit and the householder.
Now, come back to mythologies. And if you can give us some example in my earliest mythologies that, is there any discussion comes about talking about sex in good way or bad way?
Well, so when you read the Rig Veda, so in the Rig Veda there are many songs. There are Rig Veda is about 1,000 hymns. They're known as suktas, and the hymns are of different kinds. But in that there is a constant reference to men wanting to be virile and women wanting to be fertile. Now this is a common theme across cultures, because you remember today we don't suffer from maternal mortality rate, infant mortality rate, epidemics, drought, which today we are protected by technology and science. But in those days people would die at a very young age of disease, women would die during pregnancy, childbirth. So children were very important to continue your lineage. So sex is seen in a very material way, otherwise the your family line won't continue. So it is a very practical, thematic discussion. But pleasure is talked about. For example, there is a conversation between Sachi and a monkey queen, and the two of them are talking, and they're talking about, and the language is very sexual. Or there's Ashwamedha Yagya, where there is a continuous reference to male virility, female virility, and you're not able to understand. Today, in 2000 years later, when you read the scriptures, you don't know, were they talking literally? Were they talking metaphorically? Is it symbolic? We don't know. Was there some secret they were trying to communicate using the sex? But the sex is present, and the virile man was celebrated. The fertile woman was celebrated, right? So that's what you see in the Vedas. And then you see when the Buddhism comes in. So Buddha is giving up his wife, his child, his kingdom. He is conquering the daughters of Mara. Mara is the demon of desire. So he is talking about sex should be like kept at a distance, right? But his followers include a lot of dancers and singers and courtesans, jisko Ganika kehte the. So these are women like Amrapali. So you hear of these rich women who were independent women.
Amrapali is a fantastic character.
Yeah, so it's a very famous. So there was a parampara before the British came around the world, not just in India, in Japan, it was there, in China. There were these independent women who were educated and beautiful and singing and dancing, and then multiple lovers. So they would choose. Sometimes they would go to rich men, sometimes they would go to talented men. They decided whom they wanted to go to. So they were called Ganikas. This culture, in the 19th century, the people started calling them prostitute. Suddenly it became prostitution. How can one woman have many lovers? So Victorian mindset came into the picture, and they said women who have many men are prostitutes, and men who have many wives are feudal overlords and dirty people. So basically only monogamy is an acceptable form of relationship. This happened only in the 18th and 19th century. In fact, those laws were passed only in the 20th century. Yeah. But you find every kind of sexuality existing, and people there was always a balancing force. Nothing would go out of control. As I said, there's always this balancing force. So after the Buddhist period, you have Ramayana and Mahabharata becoming important. So Ramayana talks a lot about faithfulness. What is being faithful? So there are stories of Parshuram beheading his mother on the father's instruction because she felt desire for another man. Just the feeling of desire. So suddenly you see this control emerging of women's sexuality especially, and celebration of men who control their desire. So the one who doesn't have any relationship, who is a brahmachari, becomes very important. Or Ekam Patni Vrata Ram becomes very important. But at the same time you have Krishna, who has Ashtabharya, 8 queens, and his Rasalila, he has got surrounded by, he is also celebrated. In the Mahabharata, there's a very famous story of Kunti talking to Yudhishthir. Kunti talking to her husband Pandu and saying that there was a time when there was no such thing as marriage. Men and women went to each other and produced children. But then one day Shvetaketu asked his father, how will I know who is my father? And he instituted marriage. So the story of marriage comes from, in the Mahabharata, they say that it was only done to tell who is the father and who is the son. So from paternity point of view. Otherwise, before that, they didn't matter. That's why in the Mahabharata, the children are called by the mother's name. So Kauntaneya, son of Kunti. So these are the words that are used. Madreya, sons of Madre. So you find sexuality shifting in our culture from one could call it primitive, one could call it tribal, or one could call it modern. It's up to which language you want to use.
So which you think is more modern, those 2,000-3,000 years ago or today?
See, modern, what is the meaning of modern? Modern means when we allow different thoughts to intermingle. Modern is a world where choices are given. That's the broad definition of modernity. 2 things. One is I have choice, and I allow things to intermingle. These 2 things create modernity. India has always allowed intermingling. Within limits. There have been tensions, there have been points. So we have, we have the Varna Vyavastha, we have the Jati systems, which created boundaries and said this mixing is allowed, but that mixing is not allowed. So I think there were phases of modernity in India. In fact, the most modern period in India, there were 2 big modern periods. One is called the post-Buddhist period. So what is called the Gupta period. So around 2000 years ago, that was the most modern period. The second modern period is 13th, 14th, 15th century, when the Bhakti movement was taking place. And that is the height when the temples were being built, the large temples, complexes that we... It's a very modern period because literature emerges. You see very high quality of literature, where there's a lot of exchange of ideas. So Kabir is at that time.
Sure.
So these are the two modern periods. And I think we are approaching the third modern period where we are living right now.
Now, so it also raise another question is that today when we look, even in the United States, country is so liberal, so developed, that the issue of always, male and female and discrimination against women, and India, of course, we all know that, how situation is, when it comes to women, especially in the rural villages and all. So if you go back again, I want to take you back to the mythological periods. How the woman and the men, the sex was treated, as a male and female, in terms of respect in the community and society?
You see, India was not one unit, right? There are many, many units in the country. So, for example, if a woman is born in the Devadasi parampara, and that was a parampara, these women had unbelievable freedom in some periods of history. In some periods of history, they were controlled, and they were controlled by people. So, if you just look at the Devadasi parampara, at one time it is extremely liberal, at another time it is extremely controlled. If you look at general women, there's stories of Swayamvar. So that means there was a dance where women chose their husbands. But when you read the Ramayana carefully, the woman has no choice. She's part of an archery contest. Somebody wins an archery contest, somebody strikes a target and wins the wife. So she becomes commodity. You see, so over time you do see in traditions, and this is true across the world. Across the world, women started being seen not as people, but as commodities. So commodity that the father would give to a husband. There are stories where husbands are seeking wives. So it was called Asura Vivaha, where you give money and buy the wife. There was Brahma Vivaha, where you give money and buy the husband. So, husbands and wives both were treated as commodities. There is Pisacha Vivaha, which is basically rape. And when the woman is not without her permission. There's Gandharva Vivaha, where men and women would choose each other and get married. So Shakuntala and Dushanta. So there are these various forms of relationships that have existed. What we know is the more traditional families, which were, and when the moment you use the word tradition, it means the end of choice. Tradition means societies where choice is not given to individuals, where Riti and Niti, which means traditions and rules, control your life. You have no freedom. Now, modern society looks at the ancient world through the lens of liberal thought and say choice, choice, choice. But this is a modern phenomenon. 100 years ago, nobody had a choice. Even today, the members of the royal family of England don't have choices. It's all controlled by 100 rules. Just as not everybody can become the president of America, there's a whole set of rules that allow you to do it. So, rules existed in marriage, in choices. For example, in India, widows were not allowed to remarry. That is a unique feature in the subcontinent. While men were allowed, widowers were allowed to remarry. This was dealing with property, because over time, property was passed on to sons, and the whole economic system revolved around the man. In some parts of it, in major parts of India, there are certain communities, for example in Kerala, where it would pass on through the woman's children. So that is called the Sambandh system, which in the 19th century was abolished. It didn't mean women have freedom. It just meant property transmission took place through the sisters' children. So property plays a very important role in controlling the lives of women. The moment economics rules changed, and today economic rules have changed, that has changed. So because women were not allowed to have economic practice. The only economic activity they were allowed was to be a Devadasi or a Ganika, singer, dancer. So economics play a very important role.
Okay. Now another topic for you is that the play of power. So where the power lies? It's man, women, or it is between the two. How it has been looked from the mythological point of view. Like you look at Shiva, for example, half man, half woman. We get different forms of him. So if you can just throw a little bit light on that would be great.
In the Shanti Parva of Mahabharata, Yudhishthira asks Bhishma, who is dying, and Bhishma is a brahmachari, and he's asking. So imagine this young son, this young king is looking at, well, not young, he was quite old at that time, but he's asking his granduncle, who has never had sex in his life, who's dying, that who has more pleasure during sex, men or women? And Bhishma says that it is impossible to answer this question unless you have lived your life as a man and as a woman. And
Very
there's a
good
character,
point, yeah.
and but he then tells there's a character called Bhanga Ashwana, who lived his life, 50% of his life as a man and 50% of his life as a woman. And according to him, women have greater pleasure than men. So, and the same thing is told in Greek mythology. There's a very famous story of Tiresias, a blind seer, and Zeus and Hera. Zeus is the king of the gods and Hera is the queen of the gods. And they go and ask him, who has greater pleasure in life, men or women? And he says, women. And people have asked this question, why did they say that? And you know, the reason for it is the male biology can pleasure itself, has to perform. There is a great performance anxiety. And a man can only perform depending on how virile he is, at one time, once, twice, three times, and make the woman happy. But a woman's sexuality allows her that she can accept many more pleasures than men. And therefore the men start feeling inadequate in front of the women. And therefore control starts to come in. Because men started feeling inadequate around women, they started controlling women. Ki tum idhar nahi ja sakte, you can't go there, you can't do this, you can't choose this. So they started creating boundaries around women. They got scared. Because man had to continuously perform, and they always felt they were inadequate. And this
That's
anxiety.
a very interesting way to look at it, actually.
But the psychologists always talk about it. They always talk about how the female sexuality has frightened men all their lives, and therefore patriarchy grows. Patriarchy arises from a sense of anybody who feels inadequate and has performance anxieties will always be a bitter, cruel, nasty man who will deny other people pleasure and choices. And the moment, that's why the Brahma Vidya, when you read the Vedas, they'll always talk about a person who doesn't feel inadequate, who recognizes Brahma, and he knows the world is, that you don't need to perform. Life is beautiful in what it is.
Yeah.
He's at peace, and he doesn't bother with controlling people. So he is free. He's liberated.
So now, so this is of course very much applicable to all us human beings.
Yes.
Now, a lot of mythologies deal with the gods who are super human beings or more than human beings. How this sexuality existed among those gods, if you have any?
See, in Hindu, this division between humans and gods is a very, when you read Greek mythology, so gods are a different species from humans. When you read Bible, then God is something outside humans. In Hinduism, it is not like that. God is seen as infinite, and then and humans are finite. So between infinite and finite, there are different kinds of finite. So some finite forms are called devas, who live in the sky. Some finite forms are called asuras, who live under the earth. Some are called nagas. Some are called yakshas. Some are called manavas. So we are manavas. So that means the world is filled of different kinds of people. And everybody has different sexual desires, needs, wants. So the gods, for example, Shiva does not want to have any relationship with anyone. So he sits on top of Mount Kailas, shuts his eyes as a Bairagi, and doesn't want to do anything. And the goddess goes to him, Shakti goes to him and says, "Aisa nahi chalega. You have to participate in the world." And the metaphor used is marriage. You have to get married, and we have to have a relationship, and we have to produce children. And therefore the goddess is always shown with Shiva in sexual positions. And it's quite shocking to us, because we're like, but they're basically saying nature runs on sexuality. Unless the bird comes to the flower, pollination and fertilization will not take place. Unless the bull goes to the cow will not bear a calf, there will be no milk. So sex is part of life. In human beings, humans have this unique ability that we give sex meaning. We are not only looking at children, producing children, we are also looking at Arth. Arth means meaning. So we start giving meaning. Who are you having sex with? When are you having sex with? Why are you having sex with? Are you having sex only for children? Are you having sex for pleasure? Whose pleasure are you obsessed with? Your own pleasure or your partner's pleasure? इससे अर्थ का अलग अलग मीनिंग आता है. So then, for example, Ram is ekam patni vrata. He will not look at any other woman but Sita. Sita is true only to him. So they look at each other. Krishna has many lovers. But when you read the Geet Govind, the Radha demands that Krishna give her satisfaction, give her happiness. So, कैसे भगवान हो तुम अगर तुम मुझे सुख नहीं देते? Now these are very bold ideas, but in those days they were not considering bold. It is mutual respect. You have to give me happiness. I have to give you happiness. We have to give each other happiness. इसी को यज्ञ कहते हैं. We have to exchange happiness with each other. Life is about the ability to exchange happiness. Now you can give it a sexual metaphor. You can give it food metaphor. I give you food, you give me food. We can talk about respect. I respect you, you respect me. So these are the ways the gods are also indulging in sexual life. So Indra, for example, likes pleasure, but does not like responsibility. So he is Indra Sabha mein, he has got apsaras dancing around him, but he doesn't seem to be associated with the household life. While Shiva is associated with the household life. So he is Indra, jiske mandir nahi bante. Because he's a Vilasi Bhagwan. So no temple to Indra. But Shiva is Vairagi, but he's married, he has children. So in his temple, you will have the full family sitting together. Ram is with his wife in the temple. Radha with Krishna. Are they married? Not really. You know, Banki Bihari ji is singing, but the relationship is open. And it is, when you ask, nowadays people say, hey, don't ask these questions. Because we are embarrassed by our own culture.
Now, let's come back to the period when Kama Sutra was written.
Yes.
And how was that period? And if you can throw a little bit light about that.
See, Kama Sutra was really written around the same time as Ramayana and Mahabharata were written.
Okay.
So they were all being written at the same time. A simple way of remembering is 2000 years ago. That's a simple way of remembering. 1000 years ago, Muslims came to India. 2000 years ago is when Ramayana, Mahabharata, Kama Sutra, Dharma Shastras were also being written around that time. That's a period of a lot of interest. Things are happening. And Kama Sutra basically is a Shastra, which Shastra means an elaboration of rules and frameworks to explain sexuality. So they looked at sex as just one more subject. So there is Kama Shastra, there is Artha Shastra, which is economics and politics, there is Dharma Shastra, which is governance, and there is Moksha Shastra, which is about discovering who you really are, your own personal journey. We can call it the spiritual journey. Your own personal understanding ki zindagi ka maqsad kya hai, what's the purpose, what's the meaning. Kama is about your body. So it is about how your body is designed, how and body plays a very important role in India.
Sure.
You know, your sensual, your flesh, how it loves fragrances, different types of smells, different types of unguents.
I am a big devotee of bodies,
We all should be, because this is the body is our temple. And without the body, we have no existence. So I should enjoy my eyes, I should enjoy my nose, I should enjoy my tongue. I make my tongue happy by giving it good food. I make my ears happy by listening to good music. I have to help others appreciate good food, good music. With my lovers, I want to make sure that they are happy, that I make them happy, and I hope that they will make me happy. We can only hope that they will. We can't demand it. The moment you demand it, then you become a tyrant and an oppressor. So I think that is what the Kama Shastra deals with. Kama Shastra, and Kama Sutra is one of the Kama Shastras. There's many books written on it, which discusses in detail the various ways of kissing, the various ways of holding, the various ways of making love. It's very technical. Really, it's a very boring book. If you actually read Kama Sutra, it's the most boring book on earth. People think it's very pornographic. It's not. These paintings were done only in the 18th, 19th century. Or in the temples, there is the image of boys, men and women making love, but it doesn't talk about pleasure. Because doing circus gymnastics doesn't necessarily give you pleasure. What is pleasure is what your relationship is with the other.
So now talking about the temples, actually, that's another question I had for you is that what is your take on those temples like Korak and Ajanta and other temples?
See, as I said, India is a land of tension. So imagine on one side you have Buddha, the Jain Tirthankaras, you have Adi Shankaracharya. These are all brahmacharis who are saying that sex is bad, you should not have sex, you should not get married. So none of them are married, they want to stay away from their wives. They are living in these vihars, monasteries, where they are wearing simple clothes and they are denying their body. So Buddhism is talking about nirvana. Nirvana is oblivion of your identity, rejection of your body. The Shankaracharya not talking about moksha, liberation from everything which is worldly. This is one school. So you can imagine these monasteries on one side. But it has to be balanced, because if sab log becomes a monk, then the world will collapse. So it is balanced by the mandir parampara, the temples, the devalayas. Devalayas are where the gods live. And in that place where the gods live, where Vishnu lives, where Shiva lives, there is pleasure, there is marriage, there is celebration, there is ceremony, there is food, there is dance, there is fashion. So Nathdwara clothes and music and food, these are all sensual traditions. Logical extension of sensuality is sex. They don't see sex as separate from sensuality. It's only today we are saying sensual hai, lekin sexual nahi hai. Ye kaam or prem, these kind of divisions. Basically the difference is you are not attached. तुम भोग लेते हो लेकिन you don't get addicted. So they are against addiction. Saying enjoy it, but don't get addicted.
So you mean that the sex is more taboo today than it was?
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah.
It is today we are embarrassed. We are an unhappy people. That's why.
Okay.
You know, it is.
Now, this topic I have to bring to you here, and as in India, you know that the whole new sexual revolution going on, and especially when it comes to lay and LGBT
Yes.
community there, and a lot of controversies on that issue in India. That some people say, well, it's not accepted in the myths, and some say, oh, it is. So what is your take on this community from the mythological point of view?
See, the people who are opposing homosexuality mostly are brahmacharis. So they've never really had sex. And they are telling you how you should have sex. And nobody finds it weird. You know, जो बैरागी है वो गृहस्थ जीवन के बारे में बात नहीं कर सकता है. But what has happened today is hermits are telling householders how they should live their lives. Can householders also tell hermits how they should live their lives? It should be a give and take, right?
Sure.
So when Adi Shankaracharya went to Mandan Mishra and talked about philosophy, Mandan Mishra's wife Ubhaya Bharati said, have you had sex? Without sex. So Adi Shankaracharya had to have sex in order to educate himself. Now this story is there in Shankara Digvijayam. So Amara Shataka is written by Adi Shankaracharya, where Adi Shankaracharya, the great hermit, enjoys the pleasures of life. Now different people exist in the world. As in the Gita they say that har admi ka gun alag hota hai, prakriti alag hota hai. Everybody's gunas are different. Everybody's prakriti is different. Everybody's varna is different. We are all different. Which means different people respond to different stimuli. Wisdom is allowing them without destroying the social structure. Right? And therefore pleasure is allowed. Mandiron mein pleasure hota tha, but there's always a balancing force. Now what has happened today in today's society is there is this perverse pleasure in denying other people happiness. Because we have been told that spiritual people are unhappy people. They are always serious. They are not laughing, singing, dancing, having sex. Because if you have sex, you can't be spiritual. Where is these concepts coming from? This very weird understanding of the scriptures, where bhog has a place. And if you're a homosexual man, you should have bhog. But in your privacy, in your angan, which is inside your courtyard, in your privacy, do whatever you want. Not in the public space, which is chauraha. Right? So the laws are being told that let people do what they want in their privacy, between adults, in privacy, between consenting adults. And we are saying, no, that is against our culture. You have clearly not read our scriptures, where great respect is given to privacy. आंगन की बात आंगन में रहनी चाहिए. And that space is there in our culture. It's just that I think we've become very mean and we don't like people to live their own lives because I think we ourselves, unhappy people like to make other people unhappy.
So true.
This is so, you'll never find a happy person trying to make other people unhappy. And I think many people in India are very unhappy and therefore they're not wanting people to experience their own sexuality, which is their body, the body given by God to live their life. They only because dharma and the governance demands कि भैया आंगन की बात आंगन में रहने दो. It matters of food. What you cook in your kitchen should not decide what is cooked in my kitchen. Your kitchen is your kitchen, my kitchen is my kitchen. Your bedroom is your bedroom, my bedroom is my bedroom. You don't influence me, I don't influence you. And that is civilization.
Thank you very much. It was really absolutely fantastic conversation.
Thank you.
And